when Deion started talking about his concerns of the facility. And if you really dig into the question, it wasn't so much about him complaining. It was about him saying that you talk about not on my watch. You know, I come to the table with a lot of assets, a lot of branding, and we broke that down in terms of what that exactly means in terms of revenue, but it also means in terms of expectation. Not only expectation in terms of what he has on himself, the expectation he has for his players, the expectation he has for alumni, booster groups, the administration, and it's hand on hand, but he's saying, hey, if we're going to do this and we're going to have these opportunities, let's put everything forward that we can do within the resources we have. And I also think it was a hint to a lot of those folks outside of this, as he alluded to in terms of the bowl and all these corporations. He said, hey, y'all gonna have to do your part. It's no longer acceptable that you can use these demarcations to try to justify why you're not doing what you need for these HBCU institutions, particularly the one I'm at with Jackson State University. And I'm going to find a creative way to talk about it in such a way that y'all gonna know that I'm saying y'all gotta do better, y'all gotta do more.
And for the fans who might have missed it, let's go ahead and play that soundbite in its entirety, and you can hear exactly what Coach Sanders had to say.
It's not a level playing field. It's unacceptable. And thank God, God called me to change the game, to open the eyes, to open the door, not just for Jackson State, but for everybody. I mean, simplistic things like a training table, like the practice surface, some of the equipment, some of the field equipment. It's so many things that I'm on and having a lot of meetings every day, and this is one of them. So I love it. I love the challenge of it. But if these kids had the same playing field, I guarantee you more would matriculate to the next level. But it's not. And that's why I'm here to balance this thing. Because some of the things that I've seen thus far in my early tenure are truly unacceptable. And it causes a kid not to dream. It causes a kid to not have that passion because he don't see no end result that's promising for him. And the devil is a lie. That's not going to happen up under my watch. Ain't no way in the world. They deserve better.
And the part at the end, Doc, is what I love so much. The devil is a lie, not on my watch. I feel I was a little skeptical when Coach Sanders first got there, but I think the more that you see the buy-in from him, from bringing in his sons and talking about, you know, the resources and the things that just absolutely have to change. I think so many coaches and fans and media and everybody else who's been around HBCU sports their entire lives or a great part of their career know that these things are true, but you've just kind of taken it as, well, that's the way it is. And it's not just HBCU football. This is FCS football. Look, if you're not in the Power Five or even to some extent the Group of Five, all of your resources are less than. But to say that that's okay and that's just the way it is going to have to be because that's how it is, not looking at it that way is definitely a refreshing look.
Great point that you're making there. Oftentimes we get caught up in our own situations and we only know what we know. So if you don't know a world outside of that, you may know that you don't have everything, but you get used to doing more with little and you just continue to trudge forward. In a lot of ways, that's just a part of life and a deposit of where you are in the second socioeconomic status. But I'll give you another example outside of this is the president at Prairie View A&M University, Dr. Ruth Simmons. She comes from a background where she's been exposed to some of the richest institutions in this country in terms of the Ivy League. So the way that they play the game, right, understand capitalism at its finest, and she's been in that mix. Now she adds that to her cachet, and so when she comes to Prairie View, she pushes the expectations. Not because everybody else didn't understand things were differently, but she's seen more and she's been exposed to about how she can get more. And so in a lot of ways, that's Deion Sanders. Deion's been at the highest level and he's performed at the highest level. He's been across the spectrum in terms of what it really means to brand an organization and himself. And so with those capabilities and those experiences, he can bring it back to the table and not only tell folks that haven't been exposed to it, but he also now tells them this is how you get it. These are some ways that you can push the narrative that other people may not be able to do, not because they don't want to, but they don't know and have the experience of how to do it. So you put those two together and you get this explosion of what you're talking about. And for a lot of us that haven't experienced it, or at least haven't studied it, we don't quite understand it from that framework. And we're trapped by our own inability and our own inexperiences to see beyond what we can see.
I'll give you an academic example. I was an adjunct professor at Winston-Salem State for almost a decade. And at the time, I was working at a commercial radio station and then a commercial TV station in the market. And it got to a point where I would tell my students, Doc, there are things that I know and have experience, but I cannot parlay that into you because we don't have the equipment and resources for me to show you how it's done and the speed that it's done. We can talk about it in theory, but if you don't have the right tools, no matter how much you know, there are still some things you can't teach and give the proper experience and parlay those skills into another person, because it's more than just knowing. Resources are a big part of that as well.
Exactly. It goes back, as we said earlier, with the hammer and nail. If you don't have either one and you have a shovel and the nail, it's not going to quite work right. So you need all the pieces to the table, right? There are different tools for different things. And you have to use all the tools at your accessories in terms of what you have. And once you do that, then you're able to move better. And let's not forget, once you know better, you should do better.
Absolutely.